What happened when the other family showed up at Thanksgiving? The text message glowed on my husband's phone screen like a neon sign advertising betrayal. Asterisk, don't worry baby, after Thursday I'll tell Sarah everything. We can finally be together. Asterisk. I stood frozen in our kitchen at 6:47 a.m., still wearing yesterday's clothes, holding Jake's phone that had buzzed while he showered. The sender was listed as Mike Contractor, but the message was signed with a heart emoji and love, Jen. Jen. As in Jennifer Morrison. Our neighbor from 3 houses down. The one who always waved enthusiastically when she jogged past our mailbox. The one whose husband Derek grilled burgers every Sunday while their twin 8-year-old boys played basketball in the driveway. The one whose mother-in-law posted those sugary sweet family photos on Facebook every holiday. My hands shook as I scrolled up through months of messages disguised under fake contact names. Working late again tonight, that was October 15th, the same day Jennifer had texted about meeting at the Marriott downtown. Client dinner ran long, September 23rd, when she'd written about how incredible he looked in his blue shirt, the same blue shirt I'd ironed for him that morning. 3 years of marriage. 3 years of me believing his pharmaceutical sales job required so many evening meetings. 3 years of him coming home smelling like different soap, claiming the office bathrooms had switched brands. The shower turned off upstairs. I quickly scrolled to the most recent messages from Tuesday night. Asterisk Jen, Derek's mom is making her famous stuffing for Thursday. Wish you could be there instead of pretending to love Sarah's family dinner. Asterisk. Asterisk Jake, soon I won't have to pretend anything. After Thanksgiving, it's just you and me. Asterisk. Asterisk Jen, what about Derek and the boys? Asterisk. Asterisk Jake, we'll figure it out. Maybe it's time they knew the truth too. Asterisk. I set the phone down exactly where I'd found it, my mind racing. Thursday. Tomorrow. Thanksgiving. The day my husband planned to destroy our marriage while I served turkey to his parents, who'd driven 8 hours from Michigan and had been talking for weeks about how proud they were of their son for settling down with such a wonderful girl. Footsteps creaked overhead. Jake was getting dressed, probably picking out another shirt for me to compliment him on while he planned his exit strategy. I walked to our living room window and stared at the Morrison house. Their kitchen light was on, and I could see Jennifer's silhouette moving around, probably starting prep for her own family gathering. Derek would be at work soon. He managed the local Home Depot and always opened on Wednesdays. The boys would catch the school bus at 8:15, just like always. What if they didn't have to wait until after Thanksgiving to learn the truth? What if everyone learned it at exactly the same time? I pulled out my own phone and found Derek Morrison's number. We'd exchanged contact information 2 summers ago during the neighborhood block party planning committee. He'd seemed like such a decent guy, talking about his job with genuine pride and showing photos of his boys' little league team. My finger hovered over his name. Once I started this, there would be no taking it back. But then again, Jake had already made that choice for both of us. The shower upstairs turned on again, Jake's post-workout rinse routine, same as every Wednesday for 3 years. Some things never changed. I pressed Derek's number and waited for him to answer. Hello? Derek's voice sounded groggy, like I'd woken him up. Derek, hi, this is Sarah Chen from Maple Street. I'm so sorry to call this early. Oh, hey Sarah. Everything okay? Is there a gas leak or something? I almost laughed at the irony. Yes, Derek, there's definitely a leak. Actually, I was wondering if you and your family might want to join us for Thanksgiving dinner tomorrow? I know it's last minute, but we're having Jake's parents over and I realized we've never properly included our neighbors in the holidays. There was a pause. I could hear Jennifer's voice in the background asking who was calling. That's really sweet of you to offer, Derek said, but Jen's mom is coming over and she's already bought groceries for like 15 people. You know how she gets about her stuffing recipe. Oh, that's perfect then. Bring her too. And anyone else who's coming. I've got a 22-pound turkey that's way too big for just the 5 of us. My voice sounded steadier than I felt. Consider it a neighborhood potluck. The more the merrier. I heard muffled conversation, then Jennifer came on the line. Her voice had that same cheerful tone she used when she waved at me from her morning jogs, the same voice that had been telling my husband she loved him. Sarah. How sweet are you? But honestly, we couldn't impose like that. Please, I insist. What time does your family usually eat? We're planning for 3 o'clock, but I'm flexible. Well. Jennifer hesitated. I could practically hear her mind working, probably wondering how she'd manage to sneak away to see Jake if she was stuck at my dinner table. Mom Morrison always insists on eating at exactly 2:30. She's very particular about timing. Perfect. 2:30 it is then. I'll push ours up. The shower upstairs turned off again. Jake would be downstairs in 10 minutes, expecting his usual Wednesday morning coffee and kiss goodbye. Should I count on 6 people total? Actually 8, Jennifer said. Derek's brother Tom is driving down from Portland with his girlfriend. They're getting in tonight. 8 people. Even better. More witnesses to what would undoubtedly be the most memorable Thanksgiving dinner in neighborhood history. Wonderful. Oh, and Derek? Could you bring your mother-in-law's famous stuffing? Jake's always talking about how incredible it smells when he walks past your house. This part was true, he'd mentioned it just last week, though now I understood why he was so familiar with the aroma of their family dinners. Sure thing, Derek said, back on the line. Can we bring anything else? Just yourselves. Oh, actually, do you happen to have Jake's number? I want to make sure he knows about the change in timing, but his phone's been acting up. Another lie, but I needed to see how they'd react. Jake? Your husband Jake? Jennifer's voice pitched higher. Yes, do you know him? Just from around the neighborhood, she said quickly. I don't think we have his number though. Of course they didn't have his real number. He was probably saved in her phone as Mike Contractor too. No problem, I'll catch him before he leaves for work. So we'll see you all tomorrow at 2:30. I hung up before they could change their minds. Footsteps were coming down the stairs. I quickly started the coffee maker and grabbed 2 mugs from the cabinet, arranging my face into the same smile I'd worn every morning for 3 years. Morning, babe, Jake said, kissing my cheek. He smelled like my lavender body wash. You're up early. Couldn't sleep. Excited about tomorrow. I handed him his coffee, black with 1 sugar, exactly how he'd taken it since our second date. I have a surprise. Jake's coffee mug paused halfway to his lips. A surprise? I invited the Morrisons to join us for Thanksgiving dinner. You know, Derek and Jennifer from down the street? Their whole family's coming now. I watched his face carefully, sipping my own coffee like I'd just announced a change in the weather. The color drained from his cheeks so fast I thought he might faint. Coffee sloshed onto his white dress shirt, the one I picked up from the dry cleaner yesterday while he was having his client meeting at the Marriott. You, what? Why would you do that? His voice cracked on the last word. Because I thought it would be nice to get to know our neighbors better. Isn't that what good neighbors do? I grabbed a kitchen towel and dabbed at the coffee stain on his shirt, noting how he flinched away from my touch. Jennifer sounded so excited on the phone. She said her mother-in-law is bringing that famous stuffing you're always talking about. I've never talked about any stuffing. The words came out too fast, too defensive. Sure you have. Just last week you mentioned how good it smells when you walk past their house. I tilted my head, studying his panicked expression. Though now that I think about it, that's odd since you usually come home from work on Riverside Avenue, not Maple Street. Their house isn't really on your route. Jake set his mug down with shaking hands. Sometimes I take different routes. To avoid traffic. Of course. I smiled brighter. Anyway, Derek's bringing his brother Tom and his girlfriend too. Plus Jennifer's mother-in-law. It'll be like a real neighborhood celebration. Your parents are going to love meeting everyone. The mention of his parents made Jake's eyes widen. His mother had called me 3 times this week, gushing about how she couldn't wait to see us and asking if there was anything special she could bring for her favorite daughter-in-law. She'd even bought a new dress specifically for our dinner. Sarah, we can't just spring extra guests on my parents like this. My mom's been planning this dinner for weeks. She'll be fine. Your mom loves meeting new people, remember? Besides, I already called her this morning. That was a lie, but Jake didn't know that. I watched him struggle with the implications while I buttered toast I had no intention of eating. You called my mom? At 7 in the morning? She's always up early. You know how she is. I took a bite of toast, chewing slowly while Jake's panic mounted. She was thrilled about the extra company. Said it reminded her of the big family gatherings she had growing up. Jake pulled out his phone, probably to text Jennifer a warning, but stopped when he saw me watching. I need to check my schedule. Make sure I can get home early enough tomorrow. What do you mean? We always eat at 3. Right, but you said 2:30 now, and I had that important client call. What client call? I interrupted. You told me yesterday that you were completely free afternoon on Thanksgiving. Said you wanted to help me cook for once. He opened and closed his mouth like a fish gasping for air. I meant, there might be a call. You know how clients can be. Emergencies come up. On Thanksgiving? That seems unlikely. I checked my phone, making a show of looking at the time. Speaking of which, shouldn't you be leaving soon? It's already 7:20, and you said you had an 8 o'clock meeting with that new account in Westfield. Another lie. According to his text messages, Jake's first meeting wasn't until 10, which meant he probably had plans to see Jennifer after Derek left for work. The school bus picked up her boys at 8:15, giving them a convenient window. Yeah, I should go. Jake grabbed his briefcase and headed for the door, then stopped. Sarah? Maybe we should keep dinner simple tomorrow. You know, just family. But they're practically family now, aren't they? Good neighbors become like family. I kissed his cheek, tasting his fear. Have a wonderful day at work, honey. Try not to be late tonight. As his car pulled out of the driveway, I watched him turn left toward Maple Street instead of right toward the highway. Some habits were apparently hard to break. I waited exactly 15 minutes after Jake left before walking to my bedroom window that faced the Morrison house. Sure enough, his silver Honda was parked 2 blocks away on Oak Street, barely visible behind the Hendersons' oversized hedge. He thought he was being clever with his hiding spots. At 8:16 a.m., 1 minute after the school bus pulled away with the Morrison twins, Jake's familiar figure jogged up their driveway like he belonged there. Jennifer opened the back door before he even knocked. They embraced in her kitchen doorway, and I watched my husband of 3 years kiss another man's wife with the same passion he used to reserve for me. I grabbed my laptop and opened Facebook, searching for Morrison until I found Derek's profile. His mother-in-law was listed as Patricia Morrison, and her page was a goldmine. She'd posted 17 times in the past week about her excitement for our traditional family Thanksgiving. There were photos of her famous stuffing ingredients laid out on her counter, a video of her explaining her 30-year-old recipe, and a long post about how grateful she was that Derek found such a wonderful wife in our Jennifer. Poor Patricia had no idea her wonderful Jennifer was currently wrapped around my husband in her son-in-law's kitchen. I clicked on Patricia's friend list and found Derek's brother Tom. His relationship status showed in a relationship with Amanda Price, and his latest post was a photo of him and a blonde woman loading a car with luggage. Road trip to Portland for tea giving with the fam. Can't wait to see everyone. 8 people total, all unsuspecting. All about to have their holiday disrupted by the truth. My phone rang. Jake's mother. Sarah, sweetheart. I just had the most wonderful thought about tomorrow. Hi, Linda. What's that? Well, I was packing this morning and I found that old photo album from Jake's childhood. You know, the one with all his Little League pictures? I thought it would be fun to bring it along and show your new neighbors what an adorable little boy he was. My stomach clenched. Jake's Little League photos. The same photos he'd probably shown Jennifer during one of their intimate conversations. That sounds perfect, Linda. And I made that apple pie Jake loves, plus I'm bringing my grandmother's green bean casserole. Oh, I'm just so excited to meet your friends. You know, in 32 years of marriage, I've never known Jake to be close with neighbors before. It shows how much he's matured since marrying you. The irony was suffocating. He's definitely changed since we got married. For the better. You've been such a positive influence on him, dear. His father and I were just saying last night how proud we are of the man he's become. Settling down, building relationships in the community, taking his responsibilities seriously. I watched through my window as Jake emerged from the Morrison house, straightening his tie. Jennifer stood in her doorway wearing a silk robe, blowing him a kiss. He's certainly taking something seriously. What was that, honey? Nothing. Just thinking out loud. I checked the time, 8:47 a.m. Derek would be at Home Depot by now, completely unaware that his wife was still watching my husband walk down their driveway. Linda, can I ask you something? Of course, dear. How would you handle it if someone you trusted betrayed you? Someone you loved completely? There was a long pause. Sarah, is everything all right? You sound troubled. Just hypothetically. I've been watching a lot of drama on Netflix lately. Linda laughed, the sound warm and motherly. Well, I suppose I'd want the truth to come out. Secrets have a way of poisoning everything around them. Better to deal with pain honestly than live with lies. She paused. Though I can't imagine anyone wanting to betray you, sweetheart. You're one of the most genuine people I've ever met. Thank you. That means a lot. Are you sure everything's okay? Jake hasn't done anything to upset you, has he? Because if he has, his father and I will straighten him out immediately. Tomorrow, Linda would get that chance. Everything's fine. Just pre-dinner jitters. Well, don't you worry about a thing. Tomorrow will be perfect. She had no idea how right she was. After hanging up with Linda, I sat at my kitchen table and made a list. If I was going to orchestrate the perfect confrontation, every detail had to be flawless. No room for Jake or Jennifer to spin the narrative or make excuses. I started with a seating chart. Jake would sit at the head of our dining room table, like always, with his parents flanking him. I put Derek directly across from Jake, with Jennifer beside Derek where she belonged. Patricia Morrison, the mother-in-law who'd spent 30 years perfecting stuffing recipes for family gatherings, would sit right next to me where she'd have the perfect view of her daughter-in-law's face when the truth came out. The timeline was crucial. Dinner at 2:30 p.m. meant people would arrive around 2:15. I needed at least 20 minutes of normal conversation to let everyone settle in, get comfortable, maybe share a toast or two. The revelation had to come during the main course, when everyone was trapped at the table with full plates, unable to make quick exits. My phone buzzed. A text from my sister Maya in California. Asterisk happy almost turkey day. How's married life treating you? Still disgustingly happy? Asterisk. I stared at her message for 5 minutes before typing back. Asterisk life's full of surprises. I'll call you Friday with an update. Asterisk. Asterisk ominous much? Everything okay with Jake? Asterisk. Asterisk, let's just say I'm learning a lot about the man I married. Asterisk. Asterisk yikes. Call me if you need anything. Love you, sis. Asterisk. Maya had never particularly liked Jake. She told me after our wedding that something about him felt performative, like he was always playing a role. I dismissed it as sibling protectiveness. Now I wondered what she'd seen that I'd missed. At 10:30 a.m., I drove to the grocery store to buy ingredients for 3 additional side dishes. If the Morrison family was bringing 8 people, I needed to make sure there was enough food to keep everyone seated long enough for the full confrontation to unfold. In the produce section, I literally ran into Patricia Morrison. Oh my goodness, you must be Sarah, she exclaimed, pulling me into an unexpected hug. She was a small woman, maybe 5'2", with silver hair perfectly styled and kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. Derek told me about your lovely invitation. How thoughtful of you to include us in your family dinner. Standing face to face with her made everything suddenly real. This woman had no idea that in 24 hours, her family would be destroyed. She was genuinely excited about sharing Thanksgiving with us. I'm just happy we'll finally get to know our neighbors better, I managed. Jennifer speaks so highly of you, Patricia continued, loading butternut squash into her cart. She says you have the most beautiful garden, and that your husband seems like such a hardworking young man. Always sees him coming and going at odd hours, dedicated to his job. My stomach twisted. Yes, Jake's very dedicated. That's wonderful. Derek works such long hours at the store, especially during the holidays. Sometimes I worry Jennifer gets lonely, you know? It's nice that she has good neighbors to chat with. Chat with. Is that what they were calling it? Patricia, can I ask you something? The words came out before I could stop them. Of course, dear. If you discovered someone in your family was living a lie, would you want to know? Even if the truth would hurt people you love? Her expression grew serious. You know, my late husband used to say that lies are like cancer. The longer you let them grow, the more damage they do. Better to cut them out quickly, even if the surgery is painful. She patted my arm gently. Is everything all right, sweetheart? Just thinking about family dynamics. You know how holidays can bring up complicated feelings. Indeed they can. She smiled sadly. But they also have a way of showing us who people really are, don't they? Sometimes that's a blessing, sometimes it's heartbreaking. But it's always necessary. We parted ways at the checkout, Patricia waving cheerfully as she loaded her groceries into a blue sedan. I watched her drive away, knowing that in less than 24 hours, I would single-handedly destroy this sweet woman's perception of her daughter-in-law. But Jake and Jennifer had already made that choice for all of us. Some cancers needed to be cut out, no matter how much the surgery hurt. That evening, Jake came home with flowers. Grocery store roses, still dripping from the mister, wrapped in that crinkly plastic that screams last-minute guilt purchase. He handed them to me with a smile that didn't reach his eyes, the same smile he'd been practicing in our bathroom mirror for 3 years. What's the occasion? I asked, accepting the bouquet like it might bite me. Can't a husband buy his wife flowers? He loosened his tie, the same navy blue one Jennifer had complimented in her text from September. Besides, I wanted to apologize for being weird about tomorrow. You're right, it'll be nice to get to know the neighbors. I arranged the roses in a vase, noting how he kept glancing at his phone. Any particular reason for the change of heart? I just realized I've been working so much lately, I've neglected our social life. When's the last time we had people over? When's the last time you were actually home long enough to have people over, I wanted to ask. Instead, I said, your parents will be so pleased. Your mom called again this afternoon. She's bringing 3 different desserts now. Jake's phone buzzed. He grabbed it immediately, then realized I was watching and set it face down on the counter. Who else is coming again? From the Morrison family? Derek, Jennifer, their twin boys, Mason and Carter, I think. Plus Derek's mother Patricia, his brother Tom, and Tom's girlfriend Amanda. I ticked off names on my fingers, watching Jake's face grow paler with each addition. 8 people total. It'll be cozy. The boys too? His voice cracked. I didn't realize. Of course the boys. They're 8 years old, Jake. Where else would they go on Thanksgiving? I tilted my head, studying his panic. You've seen them around the neighborhood, haven't you? They play basketball in their driveway every evening around 6 p.m. The same time Jake claimed to be stuck in traffic most nights. The same time Jennifer texted about missing him. Had he been watching those boys play while he waited for their mother to sneak out for their hotel meetings? His phone buzzed again. This time he ignored it completely. Sarah, I need to tell you something. Jake's voice was barely above a whisper. My heart hammered against my ribs. Was he actually going to confess? Had my dinner invitation spooked him into honesty? What is it? He stared at his hands for a long moment. I've been thinking about us lately. About our future. About what we both want. This was it. 3 days early, but he was going to tell me. I gripped the kitchen counter, preparing myself for words I'd already read in his text messages. I want us to start trying for kids. The words hit me like a physical blow. Not a confession. Not honesty. Another lie, wrapped in a promise he had no intention of keeping. Kids? I repeated. Yeah. I know we always said we'd wait until we were more established, but seeing families like the Morrisons, it makes me want that for us. He reached for my hands, his palms sweaty and cold. What do you think? Should we start trying after the holidays? I stared at this man I'd shared a bed with for 3 years, who was now talking about making babies while planning to leave me in 4 days. The audacity was breathtaking. That's a big decision, Jake. I know, but I love you so much, Sarah. I want to build a real life with you. I want to be the kind of man who comes home every night to his family. His phone buzzed a 3rd time. He didn't even glance at it. I want to be better. Better than what? Better than I have been. More present. More committed. He squeezed my hands. Tomorrow, when our families meet, I want everyone to see how happy we are. How solid our marriage is. The performance was Oscar-worthy. If I hadn't read his texts, I might have believed him. I might have melted into his arms and started planning nursery colors. Instead, I smiled and said, I'd love that, Jake. Let's see how tomorrow goes first. His phone buzzed a 4th time. Finally, he couldn't resist checking it. Mike had sent another message, * we need to talk. Sarah invited my entire family to Thanksgiving dinner. What the hell did you tell her? *. Jake's face went white. He looked at me, then at his phone, then back at me. Everything okay? I asked innocently. Fine. Just work stuff. He shoved the phone in his pocket. I'm going to take a shower. Don't forget to use my body wash again, I called after him. You've been smelling like lavender for weeks now. It's nice. He froze halfway up the stairs but didn't respond. 30 minutes later, while Jake scrubbed off his guilt in our shower, his phone buzzed on the kitchen counter where he'd forgotten it. Jennifer again, * Derek's asking questions about how we know each other. I told him we met at the grocery store but he's acting weird. This is a disaster. We need to cancel or postpone or something. *. Then, * Jake? Answer me. I'm freaking out. *. Then, * what if they figure it out? What about the boys? What about Derek's mom? She'll have a heart attack. *. I took screenshots of everything and emailed them to myself, then deleted the email from his sent folder. Evidence, just in case Jake tried to gaslight everyone tomorrow. When he came back downstairs in his pajamas, his phone was exactly where he'd left it. Sarah, he said, hovering in the kitchen doorway. I love you. You know that, right? Of course I know that. I smiled at him, the same trusting smile I'd worn for 3 years. I love you too. Get some sleep, tomorrow's going to be a big day. As he headed to bed, I realized this was probably the last night we'd ever spend under the same roof as husband and wife. Some marriages end with lawyers and mediators and months of negotiation. Others end with turkey and stuffing and 8 dinner guests who have no idea they're about to witness the destruction of 2 families at once. The morning of Thanksgiving, I woke up at 5 a.m. to find Jake's side of the bed already empty. The shower wasn't running, and his car was still in the driveway, so I followed the sound of muffled conversation downstairs. He was pacing our kitchen in yesterday's clothes, phone pressed to his ear, voice barely above a whisper. Can't just not show up, Jen. That would be even more suspicious. He ran his free hand through his hair, the same nervous gesture he'd done since college. No, we stick to the plan. Act normal. Get through dinner, then figure out damage control. I crept closer to the staircase, staying in the shadows. What do you mean Derek's asking about my work schedule? How would he even? Jake's voice trailed off. Shit. Did you tell him I work in pharmaceuticals? My blood ran cold. Derek managed a Home Depot. If he'd started asking around about Jake's supposed client meetings, it wouldn't take long to realize that nobody at the local medical offices had ever heard of Jake Morrison from Pinnacle Medical Sales. Because Jake Morrison from Pinnacle Medical Sales didn't exist. Okay. Just tell him you misunderstood. Tell him I work in, I don't know, insurance or something. Anything that would explain irregular hours. Jake checked his watch, 5:23 a.m. Look, I have to go. Sarah will be up soon and she's already suspicious about something. Suspicious about something. If only he knew. I tiptoed back upstairs and slid under the covers just as Jake's footsteps hit the bottom stair. When he crawled back into bed, I pretended to stir sleepily. Everything okay, honey? Thought I heard voices. Just checking voicemail. Johnson Pharmaceuticals wanted to confirm delivery schedules for next week. The lie rolled off his tongue effortlessly. Go back to sleep. Big day ahead. At 8:30 a.m., Jake's parents arrived with enough luggage for a week-long stay and Linda's infectious enthusiasm. Sarah, sweetheart. Linda pulled me into one of her signature bear hugs, smelling like vanilla perfume and motherly affection. I've been awake since 4 a.m. I'm so excited about today. Bill had to stop me from calling you at 6 to see if you needed help with anything. Bill, Jake's father, rolled his eyes good-naturedly. She packed 17 different serving spoons, just in case. I told her you probably own dishes, but you know how she gets. Jake appeared in the doorway, and I watched his parents' faces light up. Linda immediately started fussing over how thin he looked, whether he was eating enough vegetables, if his job was too stressful. The same loving concern she'd shown him for 30 years, completely unaware that her son was about to blow up his marriage in approximately 6 hours. So tell us about these neighbors we're meeting, Bill said, settling into our living room with his coffee. Jake mentioned they have twin boys? 8 years old, I confirmed. Mason and Carter. They play basketball every evening in their driveway. Jake's probably seen them around. I glanced at my husband, who was studying his phone intently. Haven't you, honey? What? Oh, yeah. Cute kids. He didn't look up from his screen. Linda frowned. Jake, put that thing away. We drove 8 hours to see you, not watch you text. Sorry, Mom. Just handling some last-minute work stuff. He shoved the phone in his pocket, but not before I caught a glimpse of Jennifer's name on the screen. So what can I do to help with dinner prep? The question was so out of character that both his parents stared at him. In 3 years of hosting his family, Jake had never once offered to help cook. He usually disappeared into his home office to catch up on paperwork while I handled everything. You want to help in the kitchen? Linda asked, like he'd offered to perform brain surgery. I just want everything to be perfect today. He wrapped his arms around me from behind, and I felt how tense his shoulders were. Sarah's worked so hard planning this dinner. The least I can do is pitch in. At 11:47 a.m., my phone rang. Derek Morrison. Hey Sarah, quick question about today. Jennifer's been acting weird all morning, really stressed about meeting your family. She's convinced she's going to say something wrong or embarrass us somehow. His voice carried genuine concern. I was wondering if maybe you and she had chatted recently? She mentioned running into you at the grocery store, but she's been anxious ever since. Jake went completely still beside me, pretending to read the newspaper while obviously listening to every word. We only spoke briefly when I invited you all, I said carefully. She seemed excited about it. That's what's weird. Yesterday she was excited, but this morning she's been cleaning the same bathroom for 2 hours and snapping at the boys over nothing. Patricia's starting to worry something's wrong. In the background, I could hear Jennifer's voice. Who are you talking to? Is that Sarah? What is she saying about me? Nobody's saying anything about you, Jen. I'm just trying to figure out why you're acting like we're having dinner with the president. Derek's tone sharpened slightly. Seriously, what's going on? You're making everyone nervous. Jake's newspaper trembled in his hands. Maybe she's just perfectionist tendencies kicking in, I suggested. Some people get anxious about new social situations. Maybe. Derek didn't sound convinced. Oh, and weird question, but didn't you mention yesterday that Jake works in pharmaceuticals? Jennifer swears you said insurance, but I could have sworn. My heart hammered against my ribs. Jennifer was already trying to change Jake's cover story. You know what, I might have misspoken, I said quickly. I think he does pharmaceutical insurance. Something like that. You'd have to ask him directly. Jake shot me a grateful look that made my stomach turn. No big deal, just curious. Tom's girlfriend Amanda works for Aetna, so I thought they might have something to chat about. Derek paused. Anyway, we'll see you at 2:30. Patricia's been up since dawn working on that stuffing. She's determined to impress you. After I hung up, the kitchen fell silent except for the ticking of our wall clock. Pharmaceutical insurance? Linda asked, frowning at her son. Since when? I thought you sold directly to medical practices. Jake's face cycled through several expressions before settling on sheepish confusion. It's complicated, Mom. I work with both sides, the medical practices and the insurance companies that cover their patients. Kind of a liaison role. Bill looked skeptical. That's a new development. Last Christmas you were telling us about that big contract with the pediatric group in Westfield. The industry changes fast, Dad. You have to adapt or get left behind. I watched Jake spin lies to his own parents and wondered how long he'd been practicing this level of deception. How many other stories had he crafted over the years? How many other details of our life together were complete fiction? At 1:15 p.m., while Jake showered and his parents napped in the guest room, I stood at our kitchen window watching the Morrison house. Cars were arriving, a blue sedan that must be Patricia, a silver SUV with organ plates for Tom and Amanda. The family was gathering, probably exchanging hugs and catching up on the past year, sharing the kind of genuine warmth that would make the coming explosion even more devastating. Jennifer appeared in her kitchen window, and for just a moment, our eyes met across the 3 houses between us. She looked terrified. At 1:45 p.m., 15 minutes before the Morrison family was scheduled to arrive, Jake's phone rang. He answered it in our bedroom, but his voice carried down the hallway with crystal clarity. What do you mean Tom knows someone at Pinnacle Medical? That's impossible. I froze while arranging dinner rolls in a basket. Tom, Derek's brother from Portland, apparently had connections in Jake's supposed industry. How the hell was I supposed to know Derek's brother works in medical device sales? Jake's voice pitched higher with panic. You said he was in construction or something. Construction. Jennifer had been feeding Jake wrong information about her own family members. I crept closer to the staircase, Linda's apple pie cooling in my hands. No, we can't cancel now. Sarah's parents-in-law are already here, and my mom made enough food for 20 people. Jake was pacing again. I could hear his footsteps on our bedroom floor. We stick to the insurance story and hope Tom doesn't ask too many specific questions. A long pause. Jennifer, listen to me. In 3 hours, this will all be over. Tomorrow we tell everyone the truth and deal with the consequences. Today we just have to survive one dinner. Survive. Like our Thanksgiving dinner was some kind of military operation. I don't care if Derek's getting suspicious. What's he going to do, interrogate me over turkey? Jake's nervous laugh sounded hollow. Just act normal. Pretend you barely know me. We're just neighbors making small talk. The irony was suffocating. After months of elaborate deception, they were worried about one dinner party. At exactly 2:28 p.m., the Morrison family appeared at our front door like a Norman Rockwell painting come to life. Derek carried a massive casserole dish, the twin boys bounced with 8-year-old energy, and Patricia clutched a canvas bag that smelled like sage and butter. Tom and Amanda brought up the rear, looking travel-worn but cheerful. And Jennifer stood in the middle of it all, wearing a burgundy sweater that probably cost more than my car payment, smiling like her life depended on it. Sarah. Derek's genuine warmth made my chest tighten. Thank you so much for including us. Patricia hasn't stopped talking about meeting you all week. Patricia stepped forward, pressing a covered dish into my hands. My famous stuffing, dear. For generations of Morrison women have used this recipe. I hope it lives up to the hype. Behind her, Jake appeared in our foyer, and I watched Jennifer's carefully constructed composure crack for just a split second. Her eyes found his face, and something passed between them, longing, panic, desperation. You must be Jake, Derek said, extending his hand. I'm Derek Morrison. We're practically neighbors, but I don't think we've ever officially met. Jake shook Derek's hand, and I wondered if he could feel the tremor in my husband's grip. Great to finally meet you, Derek. Sarah's told me so much about your family. Funny, Jennifer mentioned she'd chatted with you a few times around the neighborhood. She said you work in pharmaceutical insurance? Tom stepped forward, interested. No kidding? My girlfriend Amanda works for Aetna. What company are you with? The question hung in the air like a landmine waiting to explode. Jake's mouth opened and closed twice before any sound came out. I'm actually between companies right now, he said finally. Consulting with a few different firms while I figure out my next move. It wasn't even a good lie. Tom's eyebrows drew together in confusion, and I saw Derek and Amanda exchange glances. That's interesting timing, Tom said slowly. The pharmaceutical insurance market is pretty hot right now. Most companies are hiring like crazy, especially for experienced reps. Well, Linda interrupted from behind us, let's not talk shop before we've even made introductions. I'm Linda, Jake's mother, and this is my husband Bill. We're so excited to meet Sarah's wonderful neighbors. The moment passed, but I caught Patricia studying Jake's face with the sharp attention of someone who'd raised children and learned to recognize lies. 23 people crowded into our dining room. I'd used every chair in the house plus borrowed 2 from our next-door neighbor Mrs. Chin. The seating arrangement was perfect, Derek directly across from Jake, Jennifer trapped between her husband and her mother-in-law, both families intermingled so thoroughly that no one could make a quick escape. As we settled around the table, Patricia raised her wine glass for a toast. To new friendships, she said, and to the truth that brings families together. The words truth that brings families together echoed in my ears as everyone clinked glasses around the table. I watched Jake take a large gulp of wine, his hand visibly shaking. So Jake, Tom said, cutting into his turkey, what's your take on the new Medicare Part D regulations? Amanda's been dealing with prior authorization nightmares all month. Jake nearly choked on his stuffing. I mostly work on the commercial insurance side. Don't deal much with Medicare. Amanda leaned forward, interested. Really? That's unusual. Most pharma insurance consultants have to be fluent in both markets. Which commercial payers do you work with primarily? The color drained from Jake's face completely. He looked like he might vomit right onto Patricia's famous stuffing. Mostly regional carriers, he mumbled. Small stuff. Nothing you'd probably recognize. Try me, Amanda smiled. I've been in this business for 12 years. I know pretty much every major and minor payer in the Pacific Northwest. Derek was watching this exchange with growing confusion. Jake, didn't you tell Jennifer you covered the whole West Coast? She mentioned something about you traveling to California a lot for work. I felt the first crack in Jake's foundation. Jennifer had been sharing details about his supposed job, details that were now contradicting his own lies in real time. I think there might be some confusion, Jake said desperately. I never said anything about California. Actually, Jennifer spoke up for the first time, her voice tight. I could have misunderstood. We only chatted briefly that one time at the mailbox. But Mason, one of the 8-year-old twins, piped up from his seat between his grandmother and Linda. Mom, isn't Jake the man who comes over when Daddy's at work? You said he was really nice, and we shouldn't bother him during his visits. The entire table went silent. Patricia's wine glass froze halfway to her lips. Derek's fork clattered against his plate. Linda looked confused, while Bill's expression grew sharp and focused. What visits? Derek asked slowly, his voice deadly quiet. Mason looked around the table, suddenly aware he'd said something wrong. The man who comes to see Mommy during the day. He drives the silver car like Jake's. Carter and I aren't supposed to talk to him because Mommy said he's helping with what, sweetheart? Patricia prompted gently, though her eyes were fixed on Jennifer's face. With planning Daddy's surprise birthday party, Carter finished helpfully. But Daddy's birthday isn't until February, so we didn't understand why they had to meet so many times. Jennifer's face had gone completely white. Boys, you're confused. There's no surprise party. But you told us, Mason started. You told us not to mention the nice man who brings flowers sometimes, Carter added. The one who knows Mommy's favorite coffee. Jake looked like he wanted to crawl under the table and disappear. His mother was staring at him with growing horror, pieces of a puzzle clicking together in her mind. Jake, Bill said quietly, what coffee does Jennifer drink? It was such a simple question, but loaded with implications. How would a neighbor who barely knew someone remember their coffee preferences? How would he know well enough to bring flowers? I don't know what the boys are talking about, Jake stammered. But Derek was already pulling out his phone, scrolling through something. That's funny, because I just remembered, Jennifer, you told me last month that someone kept leaving coffee cups in your car. Medium vanilla lattes from that place on 5th Street. He looked up, his eyes hard. Jake, isn't that the coffee shop right next to your office building? The trap was closing, and I hadn't even sprung it yet. The silence stretched for what felt like hours but was probably only seconds. Derek's question hung in the air like smoke from a house fire. You could smell the destruction coming, but couldn't quite see the flames yet. Jake's mouth opened and closed like he was drowning in our dining room. There are lots of coffee shops on 5th Street. That doesn't mean. Actually, Amanda said slowly, setting down her fork, I'm starting to think we haven't been properly introduced. Jake, what's your last name? You never mentioned it when we shook hands. My husband's eyes darted to me in pure panic. We shared the same last name, obviously, Chen. But Jennifer knew him as Jake Morrison, the identity he'd apparently created for their affair. If he said Chen, it would raise questions about why Jennifer thought his name was Morrison. If he said Morrison, Derek would immediately realize someone was using his family name. It's Chen, I answered for him, watching Jennifer's face crumble as she realized Jake had been lying to her about even his basic identity. Jake Chen. We've been married for 3 years. Derek's brow furrowed. That's weird, Jen. I could have sworn you mentioned meeting someone named Jake Morrison. Said he was new to the neighborhood and had the same last name as us by coincidence. Jennifer looked like she might faint. I must have misheard. You know how it is with introductions. But Patricia, who'd been quietly observing everything with grandmother's intuition, spoke up. Boys, this man who visits your mother, does he ever stay for lunch? Mason nodded enthusiastically. Sometimes. And one time he was there when we got home from school early because Carter threw up. Mom said he was fixing the sink, but the sink wasn't broken. And he gave Mom flowers on the day she was crying about something, Carter added helpfully. Pretty pink ones, like the ones Jake brought today. I looked down at my plate, hiding a smile. Today's grocery store roses were pink. Bill cleared his throat. Son, I think there's something you need to explain to everyone. But before Jake could respond, Tom's phone rang. He glanced at it apologetically. Sorry, I should take this, it's my boss. Hey Mike, what? No, I'm at a family dinner, wait, slow down. Tom's face grew serious as he listened. Mike, are you sure? Pinnacle Medical Solutions hasn't existed since 2019? The owner went bankrupt after insurance fraud charges? Jake went completely rigid beside me. Tom continued his phone conversation, oblivious to the bomb he was dropping. Yeah, I'm sitting across from someone who claims to work there. No, says he's a consultant now. Jake Chen, wait, you want to talk to him? Tom held out his phone toward Jake. My buddy Mike runs pharmaceutical sales for the entire Northwest region. He'd love to chat with a fellow industry professional. Jake stared at the phone like it was a loaded weapon. I can't take calls during dinner. That would be rude to our guests. He just wants to say hi, Tom insisted, phone still extended. Professional courtesy. Takes 2 seconds. Put it on speaker, Derek suggested, his voice taking on an edge I hadn't heard before. We'd all love to hear about Jake's work. Linda was staring at her son with growing horror. Jake, why won't you take the call? Around the table, the atmosphere had shifted completely. What started as polite confusion was becoming active suspicion. Patricia had set down her wine glass and was watching Jake like a hawk. Derek's jaw was tight with barely contained anger. Even the 8-year-old twin sensed something was wrong and had stopped eating. And Jennifer sat frozen in her chair, watching her entire life implode in real time, knowing that every second of silence was digging their grave deeper. Actually, I said, standing up and reaching for the wine bottle, before we make any phone calls, I have something I'd like to share with everyone. I walked slowly around the table, refilling wine glasses with deliberate precision, letting the silence stretch until it became unbearable. Every eye in the room followed my movements. I've been thinking a lot about truth lately, I said conversationally, topping off Patricia's glass. About how lies can poison a family from the inside out. Jake's breathing had become shallow and rapid. Sarah, maybe we should. Let me finish, honey. I moved to Derek's glass, noting how his hands were clenched into fists on the table. You see, 3 days ago, I discovered something interesting about my husband's work schedule. Jennifer made a small whimpering sound. It turns out Jake's been having a lot more client meetings than I realized. Evening meetings, weekend meetings, even some very early morning appointments. I paused behind Jake's chair, placing my hand on his shoulder and feeling him flinch. Isn't that right, sweetheart? Sarah, please don't, Jake's voice cracked. Don't what? Don't share with our guests how dedicated you are? How you've been working so hard to build relationships? I squeezed his shoulder harder. Especially your relationship with Mike from Contractor Services. The color drained from Jennifer's face so fast I thought she might pass out. She knew exactly what contact name Jake had used for her in his phone. Linda set down her fork with trembling hands. Sarah, what are you trying to say? I'm saying that Jake's been very thorough in his client communications. Hundreds of texts, actually. Very detailed discussions about meeting times, hotel preferences, and future business plans. I pulled out my phone, scrolling to the screenshots I'd taken. Would anyone like to hear some excerpts from his professional correspondence? No. Jennifer shot to her feet so quickly her chair toppled backward. You can't just what, Jennifer? Share the truth with our families? I looked at her with mock confusion. But I thought good neighbors should be honest with each other. Derek stood up slowly, his face a mask of cold fury as he looked between his wife and Jake. Someone needs to explain what the hell is going on. Right now. Tom was still holding his phone, his boss Mike apparently forgotten on the other end of the line. Wait, are we talking about an affair? Is that what this dinner is really about? Patricia's wine glass slipped from her fingers, shattering against her plate and sending burgundy liquid spreading across the white tablecloth like blood. Jennifer Marie Morrison, she whispered, tell me this isn't what it looks like. The twins were staring wide-eyed at the adults around them, Mason clutching his grandmother's arm while Carter pressed closer to his father. They didn't understand the words, but they could feel the hate and betrayal crackling through the air like electricity before a storm. Mommy? Carter's small voice cut through the tension. Why is everyone yelling? Did we say something bad? Jennifer's composure finally shattered completely. Tears streamed down her face as she looked at her sons, her husband, her mother-in-law, and finally at Jake with an expression of pure desperation. Derek, I can explain, she started. Explain what? Derek's voice was dangerously quiet. Explain why my 8-year-old sons know more about your afternoon activities than I do. Explain why you've been lying about surprise birthday parties and broken sinks. Jake finally found his voice. Look, everyone just needs to calm down. Calm down? Bill Chin stood up, his face flushed with anger I'd never seen before. My son has been lying to his wife, his family, and apparently an entire dinner table of people. Nobody's calming down until we get some goddamn truth. Linda was crying now, quiet tears running down her cheeks. Jake, how could you do this? How could you do this to Sarah? To us? I looked around the table at the wreckage I'd orchestrated, 2 families destroyed, children confused and frightened, 3 years of marriage reduced to rubble, and felt a strange sense of calm settle over me. Actually, I said, sitting back down and cutting another piece of turkey, I think everyone deserves to hear exactly how long this has been going on. I pulled out my phone and opened the screenshot folder I created. So Jake, should I start with a message from March 15th where you told Jennifer you loved her more than you'd ever loved anyone? Or maybe the one from July where you two discussed getting matching tattoos? Matching tattoos? Derek's voice dropped to a whisper. He grabbed Jennifer's wrist, pushing up her sleeve to reveal a small infinity symbol on her inner forearm. You told me this was about our family. Our eternal love. Jennifer yanked her arm away, but it was too late. Jake's face went ashen as he instinctively touched his own wrist, where I now realized he'd been hiding something under his watch for months. Show them, Jake, I said calmly, taking a sip of wine. Show everyone your matching infinity tattoo. The one you claimed was a birthmark when I asked about it in August. Linda gasped as Jake slowly rolled up his sleeve, revealing the identical symbol. Oh my god. Jake, what have you done? Tom cleared his throat awkwardly, still holding his phone. Mike's still on the line. He says he's never heard of Jake Chen in pharmaceutical sales, and he's been tracking industry professionals for 15 years. He wants to know if this is some kind of insurance scam. It's not a scam, I said, scrolling through more screenshots. It's much simpler than that. Jake's been unemployed since January. Laid off from Morrison Technical Services, which is probably why he chose Morrison as his fake last name, Jennifer. He's been using our savings to fund hotel rooms and expensive dinners while telling me he was getting promoted. Derek shot to his feet so fast his chair crashed into the wall. You used MY family's name? You've been pretending to be a Morrison while you screwed my wife? Derek, please, not in front of the boys, Patricia pleaded, but Derek was beyond hearing reason. No, Mom, they need to understand what kind of people they're dealing with. Derek's voice was shaking with rage. How much money, Sarah? How much of your savings did he steal to pay for their affair? I checked my banking app, a sick feeling spreading through my stomach. $12,000. From our house down payment fund. Linda's sob echoed through the dining room. Jake, no. Please tell me you didn't. I was going to pay it back, Jake said desperately. After I found a new job, I was going to replace every penny. With what money? Bill demanded. Sarah, has he even been looking for work? I scrolled through more evidence on my phone. Well, his browser history shows he's been spending most of his time researching apartments in Portland. Apparently that's where you two were planning to start your new life together, isn't it, Jennifer? Jennifer's face crumpled. The boys, we never talked about the boys. You said we'd figure it out later. You never talked about your children? Patricia's voice cracked with disbelief. Jennifer, how could you plan to abandon Mason and Carter? Carter looked up at his grandmother with wide, frightened eyes. Abandon us where, Grandma Patricia? Is Mommy going on a trip? The innocent question hung in the air like a death sentence. I watched Jennifer realize that her sons were hearing their mother discuss leaving them for another man, and something fundamental broke behind her eyes. I need to get them out of here, Derek said grimly, reaching for his sons. Boys, go get your coats. But we didn't finish dinner, Mason protested. And Grandma Patricia made her special stuffing. The dinner's over, Derek said firmly. We're going home. Actually, I said, setting down my phone, there's one more thing everyone should know before you leave. The room went dead silent again. Jennifer's pregnant. The words dropped into the silence like a grenade with the pin pulled out. Jennifer's face went from pale to gray to green in the span of 3 seconds. Jake's wine glass slipped from his fingers, shattering against his plate in an explosion of burgundy liquid and crystal shards. What? Derek's voice was barely a whisper. I looked directly at Jennifer, whose mouth was opening and closing like she was drowning. The pregnancy test in your bathroom garbage can, Jennifer. October 28th. I saw it when I was returning the casserole dish you lent me 3 weeks ago. You went through my garbage? Jennifer's voice cracked. I didn't go through anything. It was sitting right on top, next to an empty box of prenatal vitamins. I took another sip of wine, savoring the way the truth was unraveling everything. Congratulations, by the way. When were you planning to tell Derek? Or Jake, for that matter? Derek sank back into his chair like his legs had given out. Pregnant. You're pregnant. Derek, I can explain, Jennifer started. With whose baby? Derek's voice was deadly quiet. Jake looked like he might vomit all over Patricia's famous stuffing. We didn't. Sarah, how could you possibly know? Because unlike you, I pay attention to details. I pulled up another screenshot on my phone. Your text from November 2nd, Jake, are you sure about the timing? We need to figure this out before I leave Sarah. And Jennifer's response, the test was positive. I don't know what we're going to do. Linda was crying harder now, clutching Bill's arm. There's a baby involved? Jake, please tell me you didn't get another man's wife pregnant. We don't know whose it is, Jennifer whispered, the words barely audible. The admission hit Derek like a physical blow. His face cycled through shock, rage, and something that looked like grief. You don't know. You don't know if the baby you're carrying is your husband's or your boyfriend's. Daddy? Carter's small voice was terrified. What's wrong with Mommy? Why is she crying? Patricia stood up slowly, gathering her purse with shaking hands. Derek, get the boys. We're leaving. Now. But I want to know about the baby, Mason said, confused. Is Mommy having another brother for us? Maybe, Derek said grimly, lifting Carter into his arms. Or maybe you're getting a new step-sibling who lives in Portland. Tom finally hung up his phone, looking shell-shocked. Mike says if this Jake Chin tries to use fake credentials to get a job in pharmaceuticals, he'll report him for fraud. Just so everyone knows. Amanda nodded grimly. Identity theft for employment purposes is a federal crime. Just saying. Jake's head was in his hands now, his shoulders shaking. This wasn't supposed to happen like this. We were going to handle everything quietly, responsibly. Responsibly? Bill's voice was ice cold. Son, you stole $12,000 from your wife, lied to 2 families for months, and got your mistress pregnant while she was married to someone else. What part of that sounds responsible? The money was just temporary. The money was for our house, I interrupted, my calm facade finally cracking. The house where we were going to start our family. The house I'd been working 60-hour weeks to afford while you played house with Jennifer and her children. Derek was wrestling the twins into their coats, but Mason broke free and ran back to the table. Grandma Patricia, I don't understand. Why is everyone mad? Did Jake do something bad? Patricia knelt down to his eye level, her voice gentle despite the chaos around us. Sometimes grown-ups make very bad choices that hurt the people they love, sweetheart. That's what happened here. Did Jake hurt Mommy? Carter asked from Derek's arms. Jake hurt everyone, Derek said grimly. Including your mother. Jennifer finally found her voice. Derek, please, we need to talk about this privately. Not in front of everyone. Privately? Derek's laugh was bitter. You mean like all those private conversations you had with Jake while I was at work? Like the private pregnancy test you took without telling your husband? The timing means it could still be yours, Jennifer said desperately. Could be. Could be. Derek shook his head in disgust. My wife is carrying a baby that could belong to the unemployed liar sitting at this table, and she thinks I should be grateful for the 50-50 odds. Tom gathered up their coats and Patricia's purse. We should definitely leave. This is way beyond family dinner territory. But Linda stood up suddenly, her maternal instincts overriding her shock. Wait. Before anyone leaves, I need to say something to my son. She walked around the table to where Jake sat hunched over his shattered wine glass, and for a moment I thought she might comfort him. Instead, she picked up her purse and pulled out a thick envelope. This was your Christmas present, Jake. $5,000 to help with your house down payment, because your father and I believed in your marriage and wanted to support your future. She set the envelope on the table in front of him. Instead, I'm giving it to Sarah to help replace what you stole. Jake looked up at his mother with tears streaming down his face. Mom, please. You're not my son anymore, Linda said quietly. My son wouldn't do this to someone he claimed to love. The finality in her voice seemed to break something in Jake completely. He buried his face in his hands and started sobbing, deep, wrenching sounds that might have moved me 6 hours ago. Now they just sounded like the soundtrack to my freedom. The twins were starting to cry now, overwhelmed by the adult emotions they couldn't understand. Derek lifted both boys, one in each arm, while Patricia gathered their things with military efficiency. Sarah, Derek said, pausing at our front door, I'm sorry you got dragged into our family's mess. You didn't deserve this. Actually, I said, walking them to the door, there's something else you should know before you go. About Jennifer's job. Jennifer, who had been quietly crying into her hands, looked up sharply. Sarah, don't. She's been embezzling from the dental office where she works as a bookkeeper. Small amounts over the past 8 months. I found the bank statements when I was looking for evidence of the affair. Derek stopped dead in the doorway. What? 500 here, 300 there. Always cash withdrawals that don't match the office deposits. I'm guessing it was to help fund hotel rooms and expensive dinners with Jake. I pulled out another screenshot. She texted him in September about how she'd found a way to get extra cash for our dates. Jennifer shot to her feet. You can't prove that. Those withdrawals were legitimate office expenses. For what? I have 12 different text messages where you bragged to Jake about skimming money from Dr. Patterson's practice. I scrolled through my phone. Quote, he never checks the books anyway, too busy playing golf. We deserve this money more than he does. Derek's face had gone completely white. Jennifer, tell me you didn't steal money from your job. It wasn't stealing. I work there 60 hours a week for barely above minimum wage while Dr. Patterson drives a Tesla. Jennifer's composure was completely gone now. We needed the money for... For what? For your affair? Derek's voice was getting louder, and Carter started crying harder in his arms. Patricia stepped forward, her grandmother instincts kicking in. Derek, get the boys to the car. Now. They don't need to hear any more of this. As Derek carried his sons outside, I could hear Mason asking, Daddy, why is everyone so mad? What did Mommy do? Through our front window, I watched Derek buckle the twins into car seats while they cried, their perfect Thanksgiving destroyed by truths they were too young to understand. Back in our dining room, Jake had stopped sobbing and was staring at me with something that looked like horror mixed with grudging admiration. How long have you known? He asked quietly. About the affair? 3 days. About the money? I suspected for weeks. About Jennifer's embezzlement? I figured that out yesterday when I started digging deeper into your finances. I sat back down at the table, cutting another piece of turkey like my world hadn't just exploded. About the pregnancy? I've been waiting all dinner for the right moment to mention it. Linda was still standing frozen beside Jake's chair, clutching her purse. Sarah, how did you find all this information? How did you even know where to look? Your son got sloppy, Linda. Started leaving his phone unlocked, staying out until midnight on work calls, coming home smelling like someone else's perfume. I looked directly at Jake. Did you want to get caught? Because honestly, you made it pretty easy. Tom cleared his throat from across the room. This is incredibly awkward, but should we call the police? I mean, if there's embezzlement involved. Jennifer went completely white. You can't call the police. I'll pay it back. I never meant for it to go this far. How much did you steal, Jennifer? Patricia asked quietly, her voice heavy with disappointment. I don't know exactly. Maybe $4,000? Over 8 months? $4,000, Patricia repeated slowly. You stole $4,000 from your employer to fund an affair with an unemployed married man. When she put it like that, the whole thing sounded even more pathetic. Bill was studying his son with the expression of someone trying to recognize a stranger. Jake, I need you to answer me honestly. Was any of this real? Your job, your marriage, your life with Sarah? Jake looked around the table at the wreckage of both families, then back at his father. I don't know anymore, Dad. I honestly don't know what was real and what wasn't. The confession hung in the air like smoke from a house fire. Jake's admission that he couldn't distinguish reality from lies seemed to break whatever spell had been holding everyone frozen at our dining table. Well, I said, setting down my fork and looking around at the demolished Thanksgiving dinner, I think that's probably the most honest thing you've said in months. Patricia was helping Jennifer to her feet, her grandmother's instincts overriding her disappointment. Come on, dear. You need to get home and figure out how to explain this to your boys. My boys, Jennifer whispered, as if she'd forgotten she had children waiting in the car. Oh God, my boys. What am I going to tell them? The truth, Derek's voice came from our doorway. He'd returned alone, his face grim but determined. You're going to tell them the truth for once in their lives. Jennifer looked at her husband with desperate hope. Derek, maybe we can work through this. For the boys' sake. People make mistakes. Mistakes? Derek's laugh was hollow. Jenny, you had an 8-month affair, stole money from your job, and you're pregnant with a baby that might not be mine. That's not a mistake. That's a completely different life. Tom and Amanda were quietly gathering their coats, clearly desperate to escape the carnage. We're going to head back to the hotel, Tom announced. This feels like a family conversation. What family? Bill asked bitterly, still staring at his son. I don't recognize anyone in this room anymore. As Tom and Amanda slipped out our front door, Linda finally moved from beside Jake's chair. She walked over to me with the envelope of money still in her hands. Sarah, I meant what I said. This is yours now. She pressed the envelope into my hands. It won't replace what he stole, but it's a start. Linda, you don't have to. Yes, I do. My son destroyed your marriage and stole your future. The least I can do is try to give you back some hope. Her voice cracked. I'm so sorry, sweetheart. I thought I raised him better than this. Jake looked up from the table, his face streaked with tears and snot. Mom, I can change. I can fix this. Sarah, please, we can go to counseling. Counseling? I laughed, surprised by how bitter I sounded. Jake, you've been living a completely fictional life for almost a year. You don't have a job, I don't have any savings left, and your girlfriend is carrying a baby that might be yours. What exactly would we discuss in counseling? How we move forward. How we rebuild trust. There is no we anymore. The words came out calm and final. There hasn't been a we since you decided Jennifer Morrison was more important than our marriage. Derek was helping Patricia toward the door, but she stopped and turned back to Jennifer. What about Dr. Patterson? Are you going to tell him about the missing money, or should I? Jennifer's face crumbled again. Mom Morrison, please. I'll tell him. I'll pay everything back. I just need time. You had time, Jennifer. You had 8 months to make better choices. Patricia's voice was sad but firm. Now you have consequences instead. As the Morrison family filed out our front door, Derek paused one last time. Sarah, if you need anything, a witness for divorce proceedings, documentation of the affair, whatever, just call me. After what they put both our families through, it's the least I can do. The door closed behind them, leaving just the four of us, Jake, his parents, and me, sitting among the wreckage of what should have been a perfect family Thanksgiving. Linda was crying quietly into Bill's shoulder. 30 years, she whispered. 30 years we've been proud of him, bragging about him to our friends, supporting every decision he made. We can still be proud of Sarah, Bill said firmly, looking at me with something that might have been respect. She's the only person in this mess who told the truth. Jake's phone buzzed on the table. Jennifer's name lit up the screen. What happens now? I can't do this alone. I reached over and declined the call, then handed the phone back to my husband. Congratulations, Jake. You're about to find out exactly how much your new life is going to cost you.